by now, the conversation has quieted down, but being in your seat on Saturday and then listening to all the rhetoric about TCU yesterday, just your thoughts on how it all fell for them in the CFP.
To me, it was actually pretty straightforward, Paul. I mean, it's rare you hear most pundits give the same four in the same order, and the committee actually be right in line with that. I didn't see the logic in dropping TCU behind Ohio State, the nature of the way they lost. They lost by that much at the goal line, and a couple of controversial replays that actually could have been viewed differently. And again, credit to Kansas State, but I don't really mark a team down for losing a game by a few inches in overtime. Had they won it, there'd have been no debate. But the fact that one play went the other way, to me, wasn't enough to drop them down when they had 5 wins over ranked teams and Ohio State had been sitting there idle. That, to me, is important. If Ohio State had done something to jump up, yeah. But I just didn't see any reason to change the top 4. I didn't really have an argument with it.
Chris, I know your affection for Nick Saban. You've called some of the biggest and most dramatic moments of his career. But I would like to ask you about his comments. Everyone understands that he was standing up for his team, but he took a rather narrow approach to try to influence the committee, most have concluded. What about you?
You play whatever cards you're dealt, man. Nick didn't have a very good hand at the end of the day, right? I mean,
no.
So he's trying to use things like, hey, in Vegas, we'd be favored. Come on. I mean, are we going to really use Vegas as the decisive thing here? Michigan was a 9-point dog against Ohio State. Bama was favored by 13.5 over LSU and 9 over Tennessee. Vegas doesn't get things right all the time, and you can't base rankings on Vegas point spreads. I mean, I've never felt that way. Now, Bama fans might like it because Bama would be favored against every team except Georgia, and that's pretty much the same year in, year out. But we can't use that. And the eye test he mentioned, I understand why people want to use the eye test, but if you're going to use the eye test at the end of the season, then some would say, why play the games? You know, look, Alabama lost 2 games by 4 points. We all know that. But I heard you point out, quite rightfully, on Sunday, they also were lucky to escape against Texas at Texas A&M. They won those games basically on the final play. So they could have had 4 losses. They could have been undefeated. Yeah, there are narrow margins in the sport. At the end of the day, they didn't do enough right in those 2 losses. A bunch of penalties, a bunch of coverage busts, some turnovers. Bama fans know all this to be true. And I think in their heart of hearts, Bama fans are very smart people and very tuned into the sport. I think you understand why they're not in the bracket this year.
Let me spin ahead to the game that you'll be getting very familiar with in the next few weeks, among others, and that's the Ohio State-Georgia game. Ohio State has lost another key player today, which I'm not really sure he was going to play anyway, but it just adds to the complexion. The offensive coordinator is heading to Tulsa. I assume he'll be around. I don't know that yet, but just your thoughts on what you're going to be digging into pretty deeply for New Year's Eve.
Yeah, it's a new wrinkle. You have to sort through the personnel and see who's actually there or not there for all sorts of reasons in the postseason games. Look, I mean, you do get a team that feels like it was dead in the water and was in sort of a daze and in a funk for a few days after getting thumped by Michigan and now has a new lease on life. And you combine that with a bunch of talent, they're a dangerous team. I don't care what Georgia fans think of them right now. Ohio State's roster still has a ton of talent, and their defense is improved from last year. They're not the favorites in the game. I mean, Georgia's going to their backyard where they scored 99 points against Oregon and LSU in the 2 games in that building. For Kirby to say on Sunday, well, the top seed doesn't really matter once you get in the game. Really? The top seed matters in this case a lot because Georgia's playing right there in a building where they're very tough to beat. And, I mean, they're a favorite for a reason. Ryan Day can still handle the offense. And I think that Ohio State still has talent around them. I'm not entirely sure that the skill guys who have been rumored in or out between now and the game are actually going to be there. We'll find that out. I think there's still a few plot twists potentially there. But, Georgia, they got a lot to work on. You don't give up 500 passing yards to 2 different quarterbacks combined at LSU and feel great about your defense. But I expect there'll be a lot of hard work in cleaning things up between now and New Year's Eve.
Chris, you've hosted the Heisman for so many years, and I'm not trying to put you in a position of a handicapper because you have a lot of other things to be concerned about. But I am curious what you think is about the race as we're under an hour here before the voting closes.
Yeah, to be clear, the voters determine the Heisman finalists. Can I just say that again? Because I say it every year for people who think that ESPN decides who to invite. It's just the top four. In the era when votes are electronic, all the ballots are in before the finalists are announced. That wasn't the case in years past, where the accounting company in charge of it used to have to kind of predict how it was going to go. And you didn't always get the final four as the four finalists. Now you do. So I'd be absolutely shocked if Caleb Williams and Max Duggan weren't two of the four finalists. I think Bryce Young is still one of the best players in the country, and I think he'll be on some balance. Stetson Bennett, is representative of a great team. Most who watch Georgia play would not say he's the best player on that team, but that doesn't necessarily carry the day when it comes to Heisman voters. There's a lot of momentum for him. I think Hendon Hooker, it's a shame that he and Blake Corum got hurt. Man, they were having Heisman finalist type seasons. But the way that Williams and Duggan finished, it's such an interesting parallel. You often get finalists in New York who are riding this fairy tale wave. They've won their conference title. They're off to the playoff. And they punctuated with a big win and a bunch of stats. That's not really the case. I mean, Caleb Williams and Duggan played spectacular games. Their teams came up short. Williams is not in the playoff. Duggan is in the playoff. And I think that you've got a little bit of texture and different feel to things. But when you watched each of those guys play, Friday night and then Saturday afternoon, I mean, didn't they look like Heisman finalist type guys? I mean, I don't know that Williams has it wrapped up. Odds makers thought that he did before Friday.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.